The next big thing in AI seems to be AI agents, in which pieces of AI code will help you or companies get tasks done with less human input. But are companies equipped for this next phase? We're going to find out on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Annika Gupta. She is the Chief Product Officer at Rubrik, but also a lecturer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Welcome to the show, Annika.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I also want to mention that you were a guest on our demo show, which is the product demonstration episode that we have on CIO.com. Did a great job of showing all of the cool features of Rubrik. We're not going to talk about Rubrik after this, right?
Correct.
All right. So I wanted to ask about a lot of companies that are, deploying generative AI at their companies now. When you've interacted with them, what are you seeing in terms of what's working? What are you seeing that companies might be hesitant about in this whole generative AI ecosystem before we even get to the agentic part or AI agents?
So I think it's a really exciting moment right now in AI. I would say business leaders across the board see the opportunity to deliver vast productivity gains to their organizations through AI. But the reality is that it's still very early days. So where we've seen some success already in talking to organizations is that many organizations, especially with large call center footprints, have implemented generative AI alongside machine learning to really shorten the time it takes to resolve call center calls and just make that whole process a lot smoother and really deliver bottom line results by reducing the costs of managing a call center. And I think the reason why this is a use case that has taken off is because the ROI is so clear and the benefits dropped immediately to the bottom line. What we haven't seen is much broader scale adoption of use cases at scale. And I think where the hesitation is coming from is one is, how it's figuring out all the technology pieces and how do you put them together to deliver the outcome.
Yeah.
But second is really a concern around data privacy and data security. Today, there's a lot of data that is within an enterprise where it's very difficult to find that data. And so if you accidentally have permission set improperly, where you have confidential financial data that is actually accessible to everyone in the company, it's probably quite difficult for some random person in the company to find that information. But once you start building generative AI products, all of a sudden, search and discovery of this data could end up leading to unintended data exposure. And that's really scaring a lot of security leaders, privacy leaders, and people thinking about risk, because this opens up a whole new avenue of risk that they haven't figured out how to actually manage.
Right. So could you say this as an analogy of like the individual employee might not know where a lot of this data sits, but if you start adding an AI tool that's automatically will find it, and that's when it gets leaked, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So these are more of the general AI tools, maybe like a Microsoft Copilot or some of these, general ChatGPT type tools, versus something where you can really hone in and almost add it to an existing product. That's where we're seeing all of the people that I talk to on this show and on demo have grabbed that, what we call it the low hanging fruit. Like they have a specific idea of how to use it, rather than opening it up to the entire employee base where all of this stuff can happen. I haven't heard about, I haven't heard yet concerns about like what you just brought up, where they're worried about these tools inadvertently leaking stuff, because of what the employees are using it for.
We're seeing this even with Microsoft Copilot, because if you would think of like a OneDrive or SharePoint, you might have an employee who had access to confidential or sensitive data, create a copy of a presentation or document, and then accidentally set up the wrong sharing permissions.
Yeah.
Today, if you were to go to try to search for that, you're probably not going to find it. But then if you start layering in even Copilot technologies there, someone might ask a question about, what's the salary of the head of HR, and that may end up getting published to that person because they inadvertently had access to that data when they weren't supposed to.
Oh, you just gave me a new idea of what I can do, what I can use at my own company. Is like start looking up. I don't know if our company's even deployed any internal ChatGPT type functionality yet. But so in the media landscape, we're already seeing discussions and analysts and journalists and stories all about agentic AI. And, because again, all we can do is we're like, what's the next big thing? What's the next big thing? So it feels like there would be some concerns because you haven't even probably seen a lot of companies that are completely on board with, the last generation of generative AI. So that should be raising a lot of red flags as companies then, explore the idea of agentic AI.
Absolutely. And when we talk about generations of AI, we're not talking about one new generation a year. Now, the underlying LLMs, there's some big changes that are happening, once a year or every 6 months. But if you look at the other technologies that are developed on top of this, like the agentic AI or the AI agents that people are developing, startups are developing for a variety of different use cases, the rate of change and innovation is probably happening every 3 months. And so what we're seeing is that the just level of innovation and what is possible today versus 6 months ago and what will be possible 6 months from now is just radically different. And I don't think that business leaders have really grokked the fact that there's going to be this level of change and really what is the power of agentic AI really deployed at scale for a variety of different use cases across your organization.
Do you see the same companies pushing agentic AI that were pushing, general purpose AI tools? I think Microsoft is looking to do something. I know OpenAI certainly is. So it feels like the same people that were pushing, these large tools are now the same people that are doing agentic AI. And could we see something similar where maybe you take that niche purpose and a smaller company perhaps that could handle an agentic case for that specific purpose or tool, right? Or is it just going to be a whole big storm of mess?
My belief is that it's going to be a whole big storm of mess because
there's the phrase there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I don't, whatever that phrase entails, whatever comes to mind, because yes, the big companies are all investing in agentic AI. You see it in all of their releases. Salesforce at Dreamforce was talking about Agentforce.
Yeah.
It's all about agentic AI. But then you look at the burgeoning startup ecosystem and the companies that are building agentic AI for specific use cases and the ability for them to rapidly iterate and not necessarily be held back by the same security, privacy, legal, copyright constraints that larger companies feel because the risk is higher for them. Whereas for a startup, the risk isn't there. It's all the reward. So the amount of innovation that's happening in the startup ecosystem, I think, is unparalleled and unrivaled, especially when you talk about really bringing together not just the LLM, but truly building workflows and agents. And it's so much more about the packaging and delivery of a high quality use case, not just the underlying LLM technology, which I think will end up being owned by the larger companies.
Do the agentic tools that you see have the same concerns and the same issues around privacy or data leakage that some of these general AI tools, or are there even new concerns that maybe an agentic tool has that a regular Gen AI tool might not have?
Well, I think it's a question about who is using the tool and what concerns do they have, right? So there's a lot of consumer tools right now for video editing, image editing, taking notes on meetings, tons of different use cases that are very powerful. And an average consumer could probably use that and is not going to have a lot of complaints. Once you start bringing that into a large enterprise, and especially a highly regulated enterprise like a bank or something like that, the bank is going to have a lot of questions about what's the architecture of this, what are all the data sources, what am I allowing this agent to go do, the AI agent to go do on behalf of my employee? Is that going to fit under the regulatory standards of my industry? So then that's where a lot of the concerns come up. But I think many of these companies are starting with the consumer first approach and then rapidly iterating. And I'm sure the ones that win will figure out how to then evolve their security practices to really be able to surface a much broader industry.
Do you feel like the agentic AI is going to be attached to existing platforms again, like what we saw with generative AI, or are we going to see outside tools maybe that people start using, outside agents, whether it's in a business case or even a consumer case?
I think we'll see both because I think most of the big platforms that organizations are using can be made a lot better through agentic AI, and those companies will take the opportunity to make those improvements such that there's more automation, there's more personalization. There's just less like dashboard fatigue, things like that, and alert fatigue coming from your products. But I also think that there's going to be a whole new crop of startups and new companies that really go hone in on specific agents that maybe kind of cross barriers in a way that the technology that organizations have purchased today don't.
Yeah.
For instance, it's like, you have sales technology, you have marketing technology, you have collaboration technology. Those things don't really, like, besides collaboration, which is for the entire organization, most other technology is for a specific function. But what is so powerful about agentic AI is that you can actually cross those barriers, and you don't have to worry so much about, trying to serve only one persona, one use case. It's really something that can span all of the work you do, all the technologies. And that's where I don't think necessarily an existing company is going to come up with an agentic solution that really does that super well. And it's going to be some of these up and comers that really figure out how to develop a super intuitive user experience, really figure out how to make sure that the actions that the agents are taking are right and correct. And those are going to be the ones that end up being like new technologies that emerge for organizations to adopt.
Right. And I think for an example, you were talking to me about before the show, we were talking about, not only do companies have to worry about the tools that they deploy, but then all of these external tools that employees might be using. And
Totally.
I think you gave a great example. You surprised me because I didn't even know that this existed, but there's an AI tool that will help people give answers to interview questions, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Walk me through that a little bit about some of these tools and why this should be concerning to people that might be using, or that people might be hiring other people, right?
Yeah. It's super interesting. So the first version of AI agents, if you were, for instance, on a video call and you had an AI agent that was taking notes, doing transcription, providing recommendations, taking AIs, like they would be a member of the call with you. Like if you're on a Zoom call, they'd be a member of the Zoom call, and you can see that they're actively there. Now, the way that the technology has developed is that this technology can just run silently on your device, and the other person on the call won't have any idea that there's a AI agent in the background. Really interesting use cases that are emerging in this space are around recruiting. So specifically, like a lot of now people that are interviewing will have these AI agents running in the background, and they're getting so good because they're getting trained off of lots of different interviews that are happening, especially for the larger companies where they have their set interview questions. And if you get enough candidates putting this on their computer, you can get all of the corpus of interview questions. You can understand what was a good answer and bad. And now these AI agents are actually sitting in the background and interview the candidates, can actually in real time, when someone asks them a question, get recommendations of how to respond to that question more effectively. So that kind of throws off the entire interview process, because you don't know if you're actually getting the real answers from the candidate or if it's coming from an AI.
I saw an Instagram video that showed exactly what you were talking about. The guy had his phone and he had ChatGPT underneath, right underneath where the camera was. And so you were seeing the Zoom call, the recruiter or whoever was asking the interview question. And then within seconds, ChatGPT had an answer, and then the guy just started repeating the answer, or at least, trying to make it sound like it was his answer. And, that was, well, I mean, it's impressive and scary at the same time.
It's impressive and scary, and that technology is today. So you can imagine how that could develop in the future, especially with video and audio and images, where it's you may end up having an interview with an AI itself and not know that it's not a real person, but it's actually an AI agent. So
I'll be replacing me with my agentic AI avatar, and then let them do the interview, and then I'll get hired at some point, or my avatar will get hired, and then I'll just be sitting at home like Wall-E, or those people that were in Wall-E. All right, so I want to switch gears just a little bit. So we've talked a lot about how threat actors are going to use generative AI in new ways. Early on, it was all about making the phishing emails better, have better grammar, spelling corrections, and all that kind of stuff. Do you see in the space that threat actors might be taking advantage of agentic AI too, and you're going to start seeing even more attacks, or it feels like they're going to be doing more attacks rather than actually more sophisticated attacks? They're just going to be able to do more of them, right?
Yeah, I think it's both. They're going to both be able to do more sophisticated attacks, create, deep fakes are not just about, better phishing emails, but text, audio, video, right? All of that plays into attacks where you're trying to compromise identity. And at the same time, what agentic AI is also going to be able to do is, because it can learn while doing various tasks, it can launch a bunch of different types of attacks against a system, figure out what's working, what's not, adapt to that, and get really good at exposing vulnerabilities. So when you talk about 0-day vulnerabilities, for instance, being found in systems, today it might take a bit longer for someone to actually be able to exploit that 0-day vulnerability, but now it could happen instantaneously, and that it becomes really scary, because how quickly can an organization discover these vulnerabilities and patch them? Now, again, the technology will also be used within the security products that companies buy. So it will kind of be this race.
Yeah, we're back to a space race between the good guys and the bad guys. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because a lot of the security tools now, you see software that can detect if an attack is going on, and there's all of these alerts but those alerts get sent to a human, and then the human has to decide if this is a real attack or not a real attack. So It's almost like the defense of that, allow my agent AI to say, is this real, is this not real, and then really just either fight it if it can be fought. Like at what point do you still need humans to have some kind of decision making power, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a human is going to have to decide. For instance, if you're a set of retail stores, and you're under a security attack, do you close the retail stores? Right? Someone has to make that decision. But can the AI go and say, well, I found this potential, I got this alert. They go investigate whether the alert is real, what caused it, was it actually an attack? Do they do all of those steps, and then do they ultimately come back with a recommendation with all the data supporting it to a human? That's probably what's going to happen. But I don't know that to what extent, for the really big decisions that impact an organization, whether someone's going to trust an AI to make that decision on their behalf.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of these tools being deployed at this point? Have they been created yet, or are we still talking about a lot of what if scenarios?
I mean, I would say the security industry has always been on the cutting edge of using AI, but truly doing these agentic AI use cases where you're essentially pulling together signals from multiple different tools, investigating things, that's still early days. And I don't know, I don't know if the technology is quite there yet, but I fully believe it will get there, because you can see, again, these kinds of use cases being solved across many different types of, whether it's collaboration, other developer productivity, things like that. So you can imagine that it's being worked on right now, and these solutions will come up where you're not going to need a whole bunch of SOC analysts to go figure out what's real and what's not, and triage through your millions of alerts.
Right. Do you think companies that are thinking about agentic AI, should they take a step back and maybe look at, what advice would you give them? Should they take a step back and go, let's get a handle on our first phase of generative AI and make me feel comfortable about the data that might be getting leaked, or at least preventing the data from being leaked, before they get into agentic AI, or can they explore that while they're also doing that protection?
I think it has to be a dual-pronged approach. So one is, yes, how do I put in place the technologies, capabilities, et cetera, to reduce the downside risk of deploying these technologies and inadvertently exposing data or exposing things that you don't want to expose about your organization internally or externally. But I also think that organizations that really want to be ahead have to immerse themselves in where technology is going, and they have to experiment. At least maybe they do it on their personal laptop at home, right? But someone needs to be really thinking about this, because again, the landscape is changing so fast that if you just wait, you will be left behind. Now, I'm not saying if you're a super traditional organization, go find, take 100 people and put them on the cutting, figure out the cutting edge tools. But I do think that it's worthwhile, really having someone in the organization have a finger on the pulse to really see what the art of the possible is. Because I guarantee your competitors are doing that. And so if you don't do it, you will be left behind.
Yeah.
Today, the productivity gains that we typically see with kind of the versions of Gen AI that are being used are something like 20 to 30%, which is still really good. But I believe that the productivity gains that we really can get from AI are massively larger than that.
I'm still waiting to hear a bunch of scenarios that will help me in my own job. But then, with all of these productivity gains that are happening, I think people are left with like, well, what am I supposed to do with the rest of the time that's been saved? And it just feels like to me it'll just get backfilled with more mundane stuff or more meetings.
Well,
I'm hoping like everybody says, oh yeah, it'll allow your people to be more creative and more engaged and all of this stuff. But I sometimes think that's a utopian what if too of, and it won't be backfilled with other tasks or more tasks or something like that.
Well, people will always find a way to fill their own time, right?
Yeah.
And organizations will find a way to fill people's time. I don't know if it will be backfilled with more mundane tasks, but I don't think that the outcome is like this utopian paradise for everyone, because the reality is anytime you have a big shift in productivity, typically like the labor markets, the regulation, the government support systems don't change fast enough to keep up. And there's, with the rate of change of AI, I think like I'm even more worried about what is the societal upheaval that happens as you start saying, well, okay, a lot of the work that can be done today, that it can now be done by AI. So like, where does that put people in terms of, how does that displace the workforce?
Right. And then we'll be back to that whole discussion about whether an AI is replacing a job versus replacing a task.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm sure that these discussions will happen as we go through the year and see even more agentic AI. Just while I've got you here, I wanted to ask about consumer use of agentic AI. Are you seeing anything out there that, it feels like this is going to be a business first technology, but it might trickle down into the consumer space. I haven't seen any good examples yet of a use case where I go, wow, this is great. And every time I try to think about a scenario where it might be useful to me, I then start thinking about how much data am I giving up to this agentic AI, and that concerns me. Because again, go ahead.
So I think actually the biggest leaps right now in Gen AI are being made in the consumer space.
Oh, really? So it's okay.
Yes.
Well, then I'm talking to the right person then. So tell me where you're seeing this.
So I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples. One is, and you could see how this could translate into the business space quite successfully. There are applications where you essentially like set this up as a note taker in the background of your meetings.
Yeah.
It will take notes for you. You can also take notes yourself. It will merge the notes together. It will generate the list of action items based on the meeting, and then the next step of it, and I think it's still early days in these technologies, is it'll actually go do the actions for you. So it's like, send an email to coordinate a meeting, or schedule a meeting to do this, or send a Slack message to this person, go figure out what like the answer to this technical question is so we can return to the customer. It will actually be able to do all of those steps for you. And that is like hugely productive. It's like, how much of my day am I spending? Like I'm taking meetings, and then it's basically all of the follow-ups, all of the action items, all of the notes could automatically be done for me.
But that's still a business use case. Because
it's a personal use case. Yeah, maybe a better example of a consumer use case is just around like photo, video creation, and the ease at which now you can create a whole video or create yourself or any like family member into a photo, and it looks super realistic, and you can basically put yourself in any scenario. You can create video content really easily. You can create just any sort of web content really easily too. Like those are things, I mean, again, those translate into business use cases, but today the predominant uses of this technology is in consumer, where creators are using this, artists are using it, people who are just like want to be tinkering around with AI are using it. And there's a lot of like really interesting art and other things that are coming out of AI.
Okay. But that's just the regular AI stuff too, not necessarily the agentic AI, right? Or
it's a combination. Yeah. I think it's a combination. You're right. It's like it's a bit of the evolution of LLMs and being able to fine tune them, but it's also the workflow that you build on top of it. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like a lot of the agentic AI stuff, you can essentially think of as like having a personal assistant to do all of your household taxes, etc. for you, or having like an assistant at work to do all of that work for you.
Well, yeah. So that always makes me think of if I'm going to have a personal assistant, I'm going to want one personal assistant to do 7 different things, like, do my taxes, but also send out emails, plan these trips, go shopping. So that's at least 4 different tasks within that agentic AI. So do you think that there's going to be a general purpose agentic AI that people are going to use, or are they going to have to explore 4 different unique individual, agentic AIs?
There'll be one AI that can do all of that already.
But are they going to do? Is it going to do it good or well?
Yeah. I mean, there's already like the voice technology on AI is so good that many logistics companies and things like that, they're actually replacing the coordination, the people that you call to like coordinate things with AI, and they're able to do the job.
Yeah.
And like adapt to the situation. So it's pretty good. Like, I do think that you can have a personal assistant that'll be able to do all of those tasks.
Does it require that users give up, a lot of their information, or is there an assumption that all of this is already known by most people?
I mean, I think it depends on like what the use case that you're trying to go after and do, right?
Yeah.
If you end up wanting your agentic AI to like make bank transfers, I don't know how you do that without giving them access to your bank account. But like, that's a decision that one could make of like, do I want to actually enable that kind of use case? What we've seen time and time again is that if the benefit is high enough, people will be willing to give up their data to do it. Now, I think they're going to want the safeguards around that too. And these companies are going to have to figure out how to build those right safeguards so that they're protecting that very precious data. Because again, you're just like, as you collect more and more data, you become a target for the attackers.
Right. And again, you can say the same thing about business usage of this too. Correct. How much data is a business going to have to give up in order for these agents to work, and then prove that these are trustworthy as well. So, because again, there's a trustworthiness factor on the consumer side too.
Totally.
Like if I gave my agent access to my bank account, it would come back with, wow, you spend a lot of time at McDonald's. Maybe, and then I ask it like, oh, get me some dinner. It's going to say, well, you've been going to McDonald's a lot, so I'll get you McDonald's. And I'll be like, I don't want McDonald's. I want something else. And that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's where it gets all, it gets all messy, and then my head starts to hurt.
I think there's always going to be some, if you have like a personal assistant, agentic AI or AI agent, you're going to have to do some work in giving them some context. Now that may be, you may be able to take all of the, your phone call data, text data, or whatever that already exists, whatever you already have, and dump it into this AI very easily. So you may not have to sit there and like really train it. But there's a lot of like data that we're creating, exhaust data that we create in our daily lives, whether it's your grocery list or whatever, like all that stuff is in electronic form, at least for me. And so someone could learn from that, like an agent could learn from that very quickly and understand what my preferences are and how I operate and what I want. And when I'm talking about what to have for dinner with my husband, like what's the conversation that we have. So you can imagine that the level of effort, it could actually be quite low, because a lot of people are already kind of creating a lot of this data. It's just not in a very usable form today, but LLMs don't need it in a usable form. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think that this is going to be the year, 2025 will be the year that we're going to see a lot of this movement, or you think it's going to be slow and cautious?
I think that still adoption within enterprise is going to be somewhat slow and cautious, but I think what we're going to really see this year is true adoption of use cases that go beyond the call center or some of these really, really obvious places to start seeing that. And I think in the consumer world, like individuals, let's say, I think we're going to see a massive explosion in things like these personal agents to do all of your household chores.
All right, we're going to have you back. We'll have you back at the beginning of next year, and then we'll see how we did on this.
Sounds great.
Yeah, Anika Gupta, again, she's the Chief Product Officer at Rubrik. Thanks again for being on the show, and thanks for those insights. All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.